grew up in northern New York State. My parents were both amateur musicians. In fact, that's how they met each other, was playing early music together. Very romantic. So they brought me up playing recorders. We had a harpsichord at home. And my stepsister was a blues singer and had a wonderful career for many years. So she would come around every so often and bring me records of Papa John Creech and Miles Davis and Sugar Cane Harris, and exposed me to the other side of playing. I was lucky to live in a town that had a very, very good school music department. And when we were in third grade, they brought us into the cafeteria and said, okay, you're old enough to play a string instrument now. I think that's pretty typical. They had a player for each instrument on stage. And I remember the violinist played something flashy. And I thought, okay, that's kind of cool. And the viola player got up on stage and played that C string. Played the other strings too, just to hear what it sounds like, but really nothing flashy, just that C string, and I melted. And I still, when I think about it, it still makes me melt, that sound of that C string. So I thought, okay, I love that sound, I'm going for that. But there were no violas around for me to use. So the person in charge said, start on violin, you can always switch to viola later. As you may know, the violin parts are so much better than the viola parts. That I kind of got hooked on playing the fun parts. I played violin all the way through college. And when I started working here at Berklee, Casey Dreesen was one of my first students many years ago. And he came into his lesson with a 5-string violin. And it was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. And had that Simpsons moment, oh. So his instrument was made by a guy named John Silikowski in the Chicago area. So I called him right up, and 6 months later I had my own. And now I have everything, the fun parts and the beautiful C string. I went to school at New England Conservatory down the street for classical music, but I was very interested in all the other things that were going on there. At the time, it was called the Strings Department. Now it's called Contemporary Improvisation, and they had a jazz department. So I was playing in the classical department, but hanging around with people in the other departments. And that was a really wonderful education for me. And then I played in some bands. After I got out of college, I played in a band with Matt Glazer, actually the really eclectic string quartet. We played for a while. After a couple of decades of that, I thought, I really want to get off the road. What will I do next? And at that moment, Matt called me up and said, hey, do you want to do a little teaching at Berklee? And I thought, oh, that sounds like a good fit. Earlier in my life, I taught at some community music schools with little kids. I like playing music for people, but I also like watching those light bulbs go on when someone is struggling with something and then all of a sudden they get it. That really gets my motor running, watching those light bulbs go on. So yeah, love teaching. The Berklee String Department is unique in the world for its musical diversity. That's what I love about it the most. I am in the little room next door to this room on Thursdays, and on one side of me is the cello ensemble playing covers of metal tunes and all sorts of wonderful things, and on the other side is the Chinese music ensemble playing beautiful, unbelievable contemporary Chinese music. I mean, where else in the world can you do that? That's what's so amazing at Berklee. Also, the camaraderie. Well, it's a little hard for me to tell on the faculty, but I think there seems to be more camaraderie among the students here than I have noticed in other places that I've been, and I really appreciate that and love that about it. The ability to tell a story. Technique is a small part of the game for me. Being able to tell a musical story is really what's important, and I think you can do that at any level of technique. That's what's important. An expectation. There's an expectation that in the best possible situation we'll play like Heifetz. That's unrealistic, first of all, and Heifetz, amazing, but I think there are a lot of other wonderful ways to be a good player and have an audience and tell a story. So I think a challenge is to try to turn off that inner voice that's telling you lots of negative things and work on the inner voice that tells you lots of positive things and build on that. like to let my students help guide their education. Everybody who comes to Berklee loves music, listens to music, has favorites. String players rarely think of those favorites as being something that they can play or explore or think about. I think students who play other instruments wouldn't hesitate to hear something that they like and then see if they can figure out how to play in that. But because there are no strings, and strings are rare in many of the musical styles we teach here at Berklee, that doesn't happen so much for string players. So the way I like to guide my students is to have them choose the stuff that they're interested in, that they listen to for fun, and then figure out how can they participate in that. Well, I think my most memorable performance is probably in 2017. We had an exceptional group here for 5 weeks, which is the high school summer program. And we arranged and performed a rendition of Whipping Post, Allman Brothers' Whipping Post. And that was a spectacular performance. Those kids really lifted the roof off the Performance Center. And looking at that video now, I see so many of those students who were here for the high school program who came on to Berklee as college students and are now out in the world, you know, making the world a better place through their music. Probably my sister Anne. She is the one who came through when I was struggling with classical music and showed me that there are other options. I think she probably is, in many ways, the biggest influence in my life, yeah. I just started doing yoga a couple of years ago for the first time in my life. I'm really enjoying that. It's really opening up not just some physical issues for me that in a good way, but helping me cope with, you know, things in my life that aren't going perfectly. It's really, it's an all-around great tool, and I'm very happy to have found it. How to handle creative burnout, that has changed in my lifetime too. Lately, what I've been doing with creative, if I find myself up against creative burnout, is walk away, do something completely different. Leave it alone, come back to it later. Sometimes that works. The other thing I've been doing is, instead of feeling like I have to just throw myself into a project and not lift my head up until I'm done, is work on it for 10 minutes and then walk away. Even if my idea is still running, I have to walk away and then come back to it and let it percolate, you know. That seems to be helping. Well, some advice. I don't know if I've gotten this advice in a positive way, but I've learned the hard way, you know, come early, don't come late, don't be on time is late, even if you're the first one there. I know here at Berklee things often run a little bit late, but I still feel like I'm going to get there on time, and then at least I know I did everything I could to make it go as smoothly as it could go. Have a balanced life. That's the important thing. You know, you've got to eat, you got to sleep, you got to take care of your body, you have to take care of your relationships, and when all of that is happening, the music will come. Yes, I play with and write for a big band called the Jazz Composers Alliance Orchestra, and we have 3 events coming up this spring. One is February 18th at the Performance Center, one is March 30th at the Lily Pad, and one is the Regatta Bar on April 30th. Each one will be a little bit different, and I'm very fortunate to be able to write for a big band. I have no training in that. I did play in a couple of big bands. Actually, one here at Berklee, the Rainbow Band with Phil Wilson. He let me do that. That was very sweet. And I played with Jackie Byard's big band a little bit. But anyway, that's a lot of fun, and those 3 shows are going to be a lot. Oh, and I'm playing with Matt Jensen at the BPC on April 10th. Matt has a new, unique voice that he's opening up to the world, and so that concert is on April 10th, BPC.